He also writes, I constantly work to control my thoughts and my emotions. I've seen this play out over and over in my life. When emotion goes up, intelligence goes down. And I wrote, bitch, are you okay?
I think that's around the point where I wrote, in the book, I just wrote, cis men create their own problems and then write books about it.
Oh, say
'Cause
more about that.
let me find it again. It's just like the way that they talk to each other is just like really toxic and shitty. And it's all these systems that they created from a long time ago. And they're like, we have to find a way to crack this system that we created that's oppressing all of us. And if we don't, we'll die. It's like, what if you just like stopped enabling these systems altogether?
Well, yeah, but the thing is that then what would happen? These people wouldn't be as able to be rich. I mean, I pointed out, you talked about Miss Martin, who's the employee, and he says, at an early age, we found out how hard it was to find good staff. And I wrote, well, maybe they all learned Rich Dad's advice. Like it's this separation of them from these lower rat race type people, which they call them that, because they don't want this to get fixed. They just want to exploit what is already happening.
Right.
And so I wrote, okay, the advice seems to be like traumatize the people under you and like don't pay taxes.
Yeah.
In chapter 2, he talks about it's not how much money you make, it's how much money you keep. And he talks about how Rich Dad's empire goes to Mike and he has inherited wealth and then he chooses to run the empire, whereas Robert chooses to retire. He talks about a lot of people he admires. All of them are men. And then he really is like, so then he gets into his core argument, which is assets versus liabilities. An asset puts money in my pocket, whether I work or not, and a liability takes money out of my pocket. And I do agree that we need to ask more questions and not worry about looking stupid, which he does say. But his whole thing is basically like, you need to acquire assets and the poor and middle class acquire liabilities. And he doesn't really ever unpack why. He also talks about how most accountants and financial professionals don't agree with him, which is wild.
Everybody thinks this ain't bad.
Yeah, I mean it's bad because it exploits people without any care for doing that. Like it's basically like turn off your emotions is really a big part of it.
Yeah.
But then the problem is that he then does view himself as a good person in the sense that he then, and this again comes up over and over again, he gives to his church, he gives to charity. He's actually like giving all this knowledge to people and teaching them. So he is actually a good person.
But it's funny because he'll admit that like all the charitable donations he makes, he doesn't pay taxes on.
Exactly.